Great. Welcome back, everyone. October 6th, 2020 of our regular session, Tuesday. Today, just so everyone is aware, we'll be discussing agenda items 9, which is budget update, 10, which is the commission contracts and procurement, and 13, which is about camaraderie within the commission. But before we start with that, we're going to go to public comment. So Jesse, can you please, Raul, can you please read the instructions, and then we'll have Jesse.
Thank you. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment during their meeting by phone. There will be opportunities to address the commission regarding the items on the agenda. There will also be opportunities for the public to submit general comments about items not on the agenda. This is what is being called for now. The Commission will advise the viewing audience when it is time to submit public comment, which is right now, and then they will allow time for those who wish to comment to dial in. To call in, number 1, on your phone, please dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. Second, when prompted, please enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed using your dial pad. Third, when prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound sign. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue from which a moderator will begin unmuting callers to submit their comment. You will also hear an automatic message to press *9 to raise your hand, which indicates that you wish to comment. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will unmute you and you will hear another automatic message. The host would like you to talk, and to press *6, that's *6 to speak. You will have time to provide your comments. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it's your turn to speak, and again, please remember to turn down the live stream volume. The commissioners will take comment for every action item on the agenda. As you listen to the online video stream, the chair will call for public comments, and that is the time to call in. The process for making a public comment will be the same each time. You begin by dialing the telephone number provided on the live stream feed and following the steps as I have just outlined, and these instructions are on the website. Chair?
Okay, thank you. I forgot to do roll call. Thank you, Commissioner Ahmad, for reminding me. Take roll call, please, before we go to the public comment.
Commissioner Ahmad.
Here.
Commissioner Akutagawa.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Fueniciari.
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Here.
Commissioner Lamons.
Here.
Commissioner Sadwani.
Here.
Commissioner Sinai.
Here.
Commissioner Taylor.
Present.
Commissioner Toledo.
Here.
Commissioner Turner.
Here.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Here.
Commissioner Yee.
Here.
100%, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Okay, Jesse, can we see if I see someone's in queue.
Good morning, caller. Could you please state your name for the record, please?
Yes, Renee Westa Lusk. Spelled R-E-N-E-E, and then capital W-E-S-T-A hyphen capital L-U-S-K. I just have some questions regarding the commonly used acronyms by the commissioners. As I'm following the meeting, I kept hearing like an RPE or an RPD, and then the Gantt acronym. And I did look up the Gantt document online this morning, but I'm asking if the commissioners could have commonly used acronyms posted on the CRC website somewhere so lay people can understand what you're conversing about. That's my comment.
Thank you, I appreciate that comment. Yes, we tend to speak in acronyms, and RFP is a request for proposal. It's a document that has to go forward when you're requesting service.
Okay.
But yes, that's something we'll look into, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
if I can jump in, I don't know if we also use the term RPV, which is racially polarized voting, which is the kind of analysis that's often used to identify Voting Rights Act districts. So that, I don't know if it was RFP or RPV, but both I think have been used.
Anyone else? Oh, wait, Commissioner Vasquez?
Yes, I was actually going to make a statement of my own yesterday, and I missed out, but I am going to personally try to not use COI because that is not something I've heard outside of any of these discussions. And I will do my best to at least say out communities of interest or community of interest tool because COI is not used outside of this particular process.
And they could also think you're being coy, right? So, Jesse, anyone else in queue?
There are currently no callers in the queue.
Thank you. So we are going to move into agenda item number 9, which is the budget. And so, Raul, I'll hand it over to you. And I know there's I think there's something that we want to talk about jointly as well. So back to you, Raul.
Okay. So as of August 15, there was $3.86 million available. In addition, two parts of the appropriation that we can request, one for 1.3 for operational costs and one for 2.1 approximately for outreach efforts. And so pending the plans for the outreach efforts, we can do that ask for those funds. And operational costs, now that you have an executive director, we can start that process also. As far as the condition of funds at this point, a couple of considerations. Right now, the funds that were allocated to the state auditor, the 5.2 million, something to keep in mind is the state auditor is still providing services to the commission, and as such, until we have those contracts in place, for example, with the videography, they are still expending funds on our behalf. And so that's something that is still pending.
Are there other services that the state auditor is still providing to us other than the videography?
They're also doing procurements on our behalf. And part of that is it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to try and run a purchase order through DGS, and so I've asked them to do those purchases for us, and so we can have those things much quicker.
Well, how does that, so if it's going, and I'm sorry, I'm just for my own understanding, if we're asking them to process those, do they then, whatever position is processing them, then they code that to be charged to the commission?
I don't think they're charging, I can ask, but I don't think that they're charging staff time. But that's a question mark, and so I'll reach out and find out.
Not ask, no, I'm kidding. Commissioner Turner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roll of the 5.2 million that's been allocated, how much has been spent today?
I don't have those numbers, and part of that is because the funds are still being expended. I can tell you this, though, because the question did come up early on, well, what happens if there's any funds left? And if there's any funds left, which I doubt because they're still expending funds on your behalf, is it would have to go to the Department of Finance and to the legislature. Since this appropriation is done out of the Budget Act, there would have to be legislation then to change the appropriation.
Yeah, the question more so I'd like to know, particularly since we are talking about lessons learned going forward, is to date, how much has been spent of the allocated funds, and then I'd be interested in knowing how did it compare for the first, only for lessons going forward to be able to understand if the services they're providing, if they're the right services. We talked about needing communication sooner, et cetera. And I think it would afford us with kind of the background and information that we need, particularly as we leave notes going forward. How much money are we going to use from the auditor's department, et cetera?
That's a very good question. And posted on the website right now is the budget information for the entire 2011-2012 cycle. I provided that to the subcommittee on finances. They're actually working through that and preparing a report back to the commission. But just to let you know that's there on the website if you want to take a sneak peek, per se. Also, too, you need to understand the auditor doesn't make a report back to the commission about that expenditure. It would go to the Department of Finance and to the legislature. And that would be their responsibility to do that in that direction, not to you.
So we're spending without knowledge of where we are, or if we're overspending and making more decisions, but we don't have then any information.
Well, no, those expenditures are to the state auditor's allocation, not to the commission's allocation.
But
At the
then
point
they
to
pass
which,
that cost on, right?
pardon me?
They pass that cost on to our budget?
No, they were allocated $5.2 million. Now, at the point to which the $5.2 million is expended completely, and they're still providing services to the commission, then those services would be passed on to the commission as they were in 2011.
Okay.
And like I say, on that report, it shows the expenditures by the Secretary of State and by the state auditor. Although the state auditor didn't pass on all of the costs in 2011, but there's still pretty good numbers.
Yeah, and it's, as Raul mentioned, that it's the California Citizens Redistricting Commission for the 2010. That budget information is online, and I thought we were going to discuss it this time, but I guess we're not. What I've asked him to do is in one of our future meetings is to do like a side-by-side kind of comparison of what 2010 had their budget and what our budget is so far, kind of like a good tracking mechanism. And I'd like to have like the budget information actually like in a spreadsheet or some sort of report given to us monthly so we can track it better. But anyway, I did notice that Commissioner Lamont and Commissioner Ahmad also had questions. So, Commissioner Lamont?
Yeah, I think you partially answered the question just now. So I guess I'll reframe my question a little bit. I think, so we're going into this discussion of budget with no frame. At least I didn't feel like we really even understand what we're about to talk about. So I think this kind of harkens to some of the comments yesterday about being a little bit more detailed in what the purpose of the discussion is or action items that are to be taken. My expectation at this point would have been that we would have had some more detailed information with regard to budget, particularly if we had agendized it as an item. I know some of these questions go back to some of our earlier meetings in wanting to understand the state auditor's budget and whether or not any of those resources would be able to be used by us as a part of our budget. I understand it's a separate allocation. I understand that they track it separately. That part's fine, but I think some of the germane questions that we raised have yet to be answered. Also, if I understood correctly, yesterday we voted to approve maintaining someone who was working on our budget. So I'm a little confused as to why we wouldn't have detailed information about our own budget if we have staff that is actually working on that. So I'm just a little perplexed as to the conversation we're embarking upon, the outcomes of that conversation as it relates to the budget, and what we can expect going forward.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Ahmad and then Commissioner Sinai.
Pass.
Commissioner Sinai? You're on mute.
Sorry, I had a dog issue, so I had to turn off my video and I didn't. Anyway, a couple of things. I was alarmed when I read the staff report that there wasn't budgeted for meetings out in the community, because last time meetings were done, they found places to have it for free, but my understanding that didn't always work. And we are really looking to go where the community is, not ask community to go where we want them to go. So I do feel that we need to keep that in mind. Even if we do things virtually, I still would like us to think creatively on how some of us can be there and can connect with the community. We can't do 100% virtual. That's a trust thing. So we'll talk more about that when we do the plan, but I did want that everybody to be aware that that was in the budget, and they said that was about $6,000 per meeting, 34 meetings. So that wasn't calculated when they did that. Also, about 3 meetings ago, I think, or I don't know, the first meeting, since we've only had 3, the first meeting, we had requested to understand how we could make contracts, or I don't want contracts, how we could finance nonprofits for the work that they're doing. And we were told that we would get an update on that, and that is critical for the outreach piece and for our discussion tomorrow. So do we have an update on how we can give funding to nonprofits quickly if need be, or what's the timeline and all that?
I think that's the next agenda item.
We can talk about it now. It is part of the budget.
Well, if I may, for example, some of the questions that Commissioner Lamont was asking about go into the next part of the discussion, right? I got as far as being able to describe what's going on with the budget, some of the hindrances in getting a bottom line in terms of the actual fund condition, what's going on then in terms of actual expenditures at this time. I have a report on that. And so while we could pursue the additional areas, what I would suggest is maybe letting me go ahead and finish the part about the budget, and then we can move on.
Okay, why don't you continue to do that, and then at the end, obviously, we may have questions, but then we also want to have discussion as to if we're going to have this as an ongoing agenda item, maybe what we expect to see in terms of more information on expenditure, whatever the commission has. And then Commissioner Sanai, do you want to say something before he continues?
Yes, this goes back to what Commissioner Lamont was saying. There really should be a written report that we get to read ahead of time, and staff getting upset because we're interrupting isn't okay, because we have absolutely no clue what we're walking into right now. So I apologize for interrupting or jumping the gun, but I also didn't know, I don't have anything. So we need written information prior to a meeting so we can come prepared and not ask questions that are going to be answered later.
Okay. All right, Raul, if you can continue with your presentation.
Very good. So up through August and into the beginning of September, the expenditures have been primarily paid for by the auditor's office. What we're waiting for now here at the beginning of October is whatever invoices come in that we're paying for. And so at this point in time, it's October 6th, and those are still pending. As such, then, I can report partially. So, for example, what I was going to report today, and again, so all of this was vetted through the Finance Subcommittee in terms of what's to be reported, how is it to be reported. I understand that you want more documents, and I agree. And if I had more hours in the day, I would certainly try and accomplish that for you. But anyway, as far as your meeting costs, you've had 2 complete meetings, the August 26th through September 4th, a 7-day meeting, and then the September 23rd through 25th. The meeting costs for the August 26th through September 4th meeting were approximately $18,000 a day. That breaks down into $6,500 for the internet, the videographer, the internet streaming, $522 for the sign language, the AT&T services. That has to be an estimate. There's no invoice for that, so I had to go on the website and actually try and find how they break down their services. Approximately $2,500 per day. The transcripts, $2,000 per diem, $5,300. Staff costs approximately $1,300. For a total for the 7-day meeting, $127,505. For the September 23rd through 25th meeting, in terms of doing some cost cutting and also some improvement in services, worked with the videographer to have them start doing the public comment. I think you would agree that that's been very successful for us. So that saved that $2,500 a day. And so the costs are down to $15,000 a day, approximately. The cost for the September 23rd, 25th meeting, 3 days, is approximately $47,000. As time moves forward and we look at different types of services and how to approach those services, that's something that we'll be looking at is again, how do we improve services? How do we get something that's more cost effective?
Okay, before we take other questions, I just have to, Raul mentioned that this was vetted through the Finance Committee, and I want to let you know in terms of the expenditure information, the Finance Committee received that information Sunday evening, right before the meeting. So not a lot of time to review the information. That's something that we need to work on as we move forward to be more proactive and give us more time to actually review the expenditure. And with that, in terms of what would be beneficial for future, I completely agree. I've said it yesterday that we need to have some sort of documentation or something that we're gonna that we can at least refer to when we get to an agenda item. And for budget, I feel that's especially important because it's obviously it's our livelihood and we need to track it. Although we don't need to track it in detail. Well, we should, but we'll have staff that will do that and can, red flag as we're getting close to maybe fully expending our expenditures. But what I do want to see for future meetings is a budget and by line item, what has been, what's budgeted, what's been appropriated, what's been expended, what's been encumbered, so that we know what the balances are. And it's good information to know how much per meeting it's costing us. That's good to know because then we can project out. And when I say that's good to know, it's not good to know so that, we only have enough for 3 more meetings. No, we have 20 more meetings we want to do. So let's go and find, see what we can do about getting additional money. I don't want it to restrict us, but I want it to be a guide in terms of when we need to move forward to request additional funding. So does anyone else have any other comments regarding budgets? Commissioner Lamont?
Yeah, first I want to say, staff, we appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. I think we're sort of at a point in this process where we've stretched you to the limit. You're carrying this situation, this whole ship for the last several months with a very, very skeletal team. And my questions aren't intended to show any kind of lack of appreciation of all of the work that you guys are doing. And I know that these processes are going to improve as we move forward and get staff in place, which is why I prefaced my budget comments with the point that I thought we had someone working on that. At a bare minimum, I'd just like to go into any of these particular agenda items, really understanding what we're doing, if they could get framed up on the front end. Whether the subcommittee has established it or whoever, it's fine with me. I just want to know if we can focus discussions, we know what we're talking about. And I think to Commissioner Sanai's point, when we don't know, we end up asking, all of us, I mean, we end up, well, some of us more than others, but we end up asking a lot of questions about things that are going to eventually get addressed, but we have no way of knowing because we have no idea what really is, what is going to be the substantive conversation about that particular item. So when anyone is presenting, maybe if you open with an overview of this is what I'm going to cover, this is the outcome, so then we can set our minds and go, oh, okay, this is where we're going with this. And that's not to prevent anyone from asking any different questions, but at least you're kind of on a path and know where you're going. So that would be very helpful in the immediate. Like we could do that right now because whoever is talking or going to present knows what they're going to talk about. We don't have any way to communicate with each other. So that's why we don't know. I mean, stuff isn't sent out to us in mass, so we don't have it. And if a subcommittee gets together and makes some decisions that we are fine, you know, it's not that we're questioning the decisions, it's just you guys have talked, whoever's on the subcommittee, so you know what's going on, but the other people don't know. So if just when you're going to present, whether that's staff or a subcommittee, if you can just give us a little overarch of what to expect from the presentation, I think it'll help frame us up a little better. And as our staff comes on board, this will get better and better. So I just wanted to acknowledge staff and our appreciation for the work, and it's a lot, and we realize that.
And if I may, some of these figures really aren't available yet. Like I said, through August and into the beginning of September, the auditor's providing those services. The services that we're paying for are occurring in September. It's the beginning of the month in October. They haven't come in yet, as well as any of the reports from Department of General Services, Fiscal Services. So the information just is not available this early in the month. Later on in the month, I should have those reports, and then you can get something a lot more detailed. So maybe when I said that, I wasn't being plain enough in terms of what those issues are there. And likewise with your appropriation, those factors that impede knowing what the actual condition is right now are coincident with expenditures being done on one appropriation, as well as we don't have the figures in yet for September. So it's not like the information is not being provided to you. It's not here yet.
Okay. And yes, thank you, Rowan. Also, just in response to, and I do see Commissioner Turner has a question too, but in response to Commissioner Lamont's question regarding the RAs that we approved, the one for budget, can you explain a little bit more about what they're doing? Because I don't, they're just part-time, of course, but if you could just provide a little bit more information.
So they're not acting in the capacity of your budget director. They're acting in the capacity of those parts of the budget that deal with the state system. Fiscal is what it's called. And a specific part of Fiscal for budgets is called Hyperion. The way that it's been set up is it's two different but coincident systems. Anything that has to do for an invoice, a purchase order, a contract has to be entered into the Hyperion system, and it's a whole layer of information. Once that is in place, then you can go ahead and set up the accounting system to even submit an invoice. And so what they're doing is making sure as the contracts are in place, as invoices are anticipated to be in place, to make sure that information is there in the system so that the state controller's office will recognize that for payment. Okay? I don't know.
Right, because they're not a true, like what I would think a budget analyst, they're not a true budget analyst, if that's their focus is to really track the budget and, have like a revolving budget that's continually updated, right? I mean.
In the future, right now, a lot of it is setting things up so that payments can be made, invoices can be submitted. Your TECs go through that process. Your per diems roundaboutly go in through the state controller's office. So that's what's all being set up, is all those pieces, parts. The other part is, again, in terms of your specific expenditures, they happened last month in September. And so we haven't received all the invoices for that, and that's why some of the information is, just looking forward and extrapolating.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Turner, then Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, and mine's, thank you, Madam Chair, was a question for maybe you, maybe council, but I'm trying to keep straight and gain clarity around when we're opening for public comment. I thought we started these sessions a couple of meetings back stating that they had to happen at the conclusion of every agenda item. And if we didn't do that some yesterday, but also we're talking just now about rolling from 9 into 10 and rolling them together. And I'd just like to know, are we required to do them in between after every agenda item, or are we not? I love the combining, but I do want clarity on what we're supposed to be doing.
Okay.
If
It's
an
my
action-
understanding, I'm going to defer to Marion, but it's my understanding if there isn't action taken on the agenda item, you do not need to go to public comment.
Okay.
Is that correct, Marion?
There needs to be public comment allowed on that item, but it doesn't necessarily need to be during that item. If there's action taken, then you need to have public comment before you take action.
Okay, right. So, okay. So if there's no action, you don't have to do public comment.
You don't have to do public comment during that item. You have to, if someone wants to talk about it during the public comment, then it's permissible.
Okay. Commissioner Anderson and then Commissioner Kennedy.
I also, I totally agree with everything that Commissioner Lamont has been saying. There's one, I really, but again, agree, before proceeding forward, we definitely need a handout for the budget item, but for basically everything. And I'm also confused in terms of, and I don't quite know if this is the right place, but so do we actually have other people working for us now in the staff? And do we ever hear, since this is administrative, I don't think this is that we have to do an open meeting, but is there, can we get posted with a list of who is actually working in the staff for us now? Because, we actually do have the press release that went out, right? That's someone who's working for us. And so if we do have people who are doing things for us, I think the commission as a group would like to know that, so we have an idea of, because I know there's again, this is not anything on the two staffers here who are doing so much, way more than they could possibly do. But when I hear there's an indication that, we do have a couple of people who are working for us now. So, and doing kind of different things, it leads to a frustration of, well, then why don't we know this information, or why don't we know that information? It just is, it causes miscommunication, and there's just a lot of miscommunication here. And I think it's because we're all so worried about, everything, what needs to be done in open meeting. And if it's in administration part, I don't think that requires quite the extreme, but that doesn't mean we have to be held in the dark. So if we could change that, please. And I don't know if it just, I know there's a privacy concern about who's being hired and things like that, but whatever mechanism we need to put in place, can we put it in place so we know as commissioners, if someone from the staff calls us because they've been told to do this, to get information, say from a subcommittee, that we don't go, who the heck are you? You could be anybody. I have no idea, and I'm not going to give you any information. So I please would request those two things.
Okay. I'll go to roll, but I believe the only staff right now, because the communications and the IT are contractors, and the staff is Raul and Marion, and then the two other RAs, retired annuitants, that we approved yesterday,
yesterday.
they were hired by the state auditor, I believe, right?
No.
Well, they were hired for the 2010.
2010, yes.
Right,
The
right.
state auditor had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
And they're very, very part-time. And as I mentioned yesterday, up till now, what they've been mostly handling is finishing up the fiscal year's end from the 2010 commission. That work is still waiting to be completed. And then I asked them if they would stay on to provide the budget and the accounting to get those parts of your system entered in. And that's why they were brought forward to you yesterday, so that there could be an official acknowledgement that they're here, that they will be doing that work on your behalf on an interim basis. Most of the work I'm doing for you. Marion provides whatever assistance is needed from her position, and she takes on other things too that are not strictly speaking chief counsel related, but that I just need some help.
Okay, thank you, Raul. Commissioner Kennedy and then Commissioner Fornaciari.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the documents that I came across in researching the commission in the last few months is the 2010 it's called the Administrative Support Action Plan that Secretary Bowen and her staff developed to support the transition from a random draw through fully operational. And I'm wondering, I haven't seen one for 2020. Did the state auditor's office do a similar administrative support action plan for the transition?
That was a change made in the law after the 2010 commission completed its work. The transition, before it was the auditor selected, then the Secretary of State's provided transition. That law was changed so that the auditor took over the Secretary of State's responsibilities. So for this time around, the Secretary of State had no role. All those duties were performed by the state auditor.
Correct.
I understand that. My question is, did the auditor's office prepare an administrative support action plan to get the commission from the random draw through fully operational?
Well, yes, they did internally, and if I hear your frustration, Commissioner, and something to keep in mind. So, for example, with the three positions, the executive director, communications director, chief counsel, all those recruitments were done. Now, this commission decided that it wanted to go ahead and conduct its own. Okay, at that point in time, there is kind of cause and effect in that it meant you weren't moving forward with getting a communications director, but you needed communications services. But that's not because the auditor's office didn't do that front-end work. The Secretary of State did that last time, just as it did this time. In other words, put out those recruitments. The big difference is that in 2011, those recruitments were used then to fill those positions, and it happened much faster. This go around, it didn't. And so interim services were required. But that was a choice on the commission's behalf, not on the auditor's behalf. And so that's why then to the Ogilvy contract, to make sure that you have interim services, that you have Marion here to provide those interim chief counsel services. But there's a cause and effect.
Well, I mean,
So
on the executive
no.
director, we did not reopen. We took we reviewed the applicants we got. We interviewed 5 of them, and we're moving forward. So, I mean,
That's true for your executive director, and they're coming on board
least,
October 12th. Yes.
Yes,
That's
at
very
least
good.
for the purposes of the lessons learned subcommittee, and I'm glad we have a lessons learned subcommittee this early in the process. I would request a copy of that internal transition administrative support plan developed in the auditor's office, because I think that may help us see where we can make recommendations to improve this process next time. I mean, I would also go back to a point that I made several meetings ago, and I think you were generally in agreement, Raul, that in some sense, there is it's almost like the legislature. The legislature doesn't disappear, and they don't, the office buildings don't disappear. They don't have to rebuild the Capitol or go rent space for sessions. Members come and go, but the institution remains. And what I would like to see long term is, and we discussed this particularly in terms of, I think it was contracting authority and putting something on hiatus until the next commissioners took office, but so as not to have to start from scratch and lose so much time. Yes. I think the general framework needs to be, there is an institution, even if it hibernates period from time to time, but there is a permanent institution with permanent policies and procedures that the incumbent commissioners can change as and when they decide to change it. But I think we're spending too much time building an airplane that the 2010 Commission built, and apparently when passengers got off, the plane went to the plane cemetery out in the Mojave, and we're having to start over.
Well, believe me, I'm in 100% agreement with you. What you don't see is the 2.5 months that I've spent to reestablish a recognition of this entity back in June and July and August, that's gotten you to this place. And I agree, because because there was that 8-year hiatus, that's no reason to forget the commission and its place in the Constitution. The fact that it happened this time is a lesson learned, and I've been working with the control agencies to actually get that documentation in place. So coincident with the work that I'm doing on your day-to-day services is the work that I'm doing with the control agencies to have that documentation in place, because it was completely lacking.
And if I may add, one of the problems is there's a glitch in the way the commission and its staff were established. The terms of the 2010 commission ended when the first 8 were selected, and the employees for the 2010 commission were no longer employed officially after that time. But there was no 2020 commission until the next 6 were picked. So there is this 6-week when there was nothing.
We definitely need to work on that. And Raul, I really do appreciate that this has been a lot of work, and unfortunately some needless work. And as I say, for the purposes of the lessons learned subcommittee, we're going to try to work on this as a very high priority. And really, I believe I've said this before, to the extent that the two of you are overworked, I would hope that, Mr. Claypool's report set out something that I'm in full agreement with, which is there's no common understanding of what fully functional means. And that's part of our problem, that the state auditor's office has one concept of what getting us up to fully functional is, and I think we have a different concept of what fully functional is, and the legislature may have yet another concept of what getting the commission up to fully functional is. But we really need to nail that down, clarify that, so that the next commission doesn't have to go through this. Right. I mean, the state auditor, if there's too much work, and it looks like there is, then the state auditor needs to be providing more staff.
Actually, part of it too is in statute, because statutory authority for staffing and for contracts is with the commission. And when there's no commission in place, then who holds that? That's a gray area in the law that needs to be addressed, but that was also one of the gray areas that kept the auditor from being able to do additional things that they wanted to do. That was a question that was posed. We looked at it, we ran it through legal, and there was really nothing in place right now that enabled the auditor to supersede what was already in law in terms of those two acts that belong solely with the commission and solely on the basis of a supermajority vote. So as far as the subcommittee, yeah, I'd be happy to work with you because I've got my list too. And just so you know, there's a lot of folks working on it. Quite often with these ventures, you don't really get to see the impact of decisions made 8 years ago, 10 years ago, until the next go-round, and now you're actually seeing how they work. And anyway, so we're in a really good spot right now in terms of the immediacy of the effects of those decisions from back then.
Thank you. And thank you. And in terms of the fully functional and being able to staff, I mean, I think that would be a good future agenda item once we're all staffed and up and running, to really pinpoint what our definition is at that point and what we would like to see for the next commission in terms of what resources they will have available day one versus having to wait. So the next Commissioner Fornaciari.
Yeah, just to add on to that conversation, Raul already touched on this point, but you know what's one of the missing pieces here is a budget director. Now that we have an executive director in place, we can start that. He can start that process to get a budget director in place, who can, will be responsible for pulling all these pieces together and working with us, with the budget committee or the finance committee to, ensure that we've got the ongoing reporting process in place so we can keep track of the budgets and understand where we're at. So I think, that'll definitely be a priority for the executive director when he comes on board to fill that slot so we can more effectively understand where things are at and keep track of that.
Thank you. And again, I understand all of us in terms of wanting to have documentation for every agenda item. And again, we're being sensitive, trying to be sensitive to, we really only have 2 staff that are supporting us right now. So for the next couple of meetings, I'm not sure how much documentation we'll have for each agenda item, but as Commissioner Fornaciari just mentioned, I think once we have the budget director and some of the other staff, then at that point, I believe we would fully expect to see more documentation. So any other questions? And I am glad to see that by using the current videographer to do our public comments, we are saving in terms of not having to use AT&T. So thank you very much for doing that. Commissioner Lamont, and then Commissioner Yee.
Yeah, I just wanted to, excuse me, I want to reinforce my point about communication and not so much about the documentation. I can be patient with documentation, but even as we get our executive director on, I think we've been told a lot, this is going to happen when the budget person gets on, then this will happen. I think we should be aware of what to expect in the interim. How is it handled in the interim? Because we're operating in the interim and we are impacted by the interim. And I think that's where we began to get frustrated because, 2 meetings go by or a month goes by and nothing's happened. And then the response is that we're waiting for this person to be hired and we go, oh, that's 6-8 weeks from now. So I think if we're clear that, yes, this is what we can expect now, and this is what you'll get now, or this is how it's going to be handled now, And then once the person or whatever role is filled, this is how it'll move forward. And then back to my point about the agenda items or whoever's presenting, I think just given a verbal overview, I don't have to have that part in paper now because I know that that's a hard thing to do. But if you can set us up to understand what we're going to talk about, I think it'll be helpful to me, at least just knowing that we can narrow our discussion. So I want to just reinforce that point of framing the discussion and not have that get convoluted with the idea of needing things in writing. I do support that, but I understand that's something that'll be more long term.
Okay. Great, thank you. Commissioner Yee?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So first of all, yes, also wanted to just acknowledge Marion and Roel's good efforts so far and all you've done to really support us magnificently. Also want to acknowledge, I think, what I think is, a little bit of mixed messaging from us as a commission. On one hand, frustrated that more was not left in place for us and having to reinvent things from scratch and so on. On the other hand, bristling a bit when things had been done before we had decided them or whatever initiatives taken, and it's only natural, no blame either way, but just to acknowledge that I think we've sent somewhat mixed messages on that regard, which is only natural, but still it's something to take responsibility for as well. A quick question. So we have our 2 RAs that we talked about yesterday, bringing back, and Marion. But Roel, I don't think we've heard your status with us. And if it's appropriate in open session, if you want to just remind us of that, where you are, and as we bring the executive director on, where that leaves you.
So currently, I'm funded through the state auditor's office. And once the executive director comes in, then I guess I have to make a decision. And so do you, as far as my services or my place.
So are you with the state auditor, are you full-time with them or are you an RA with them? A retired annuitant or full-time?
So I was hired as an RA. I am an RA. And
Okay.
So this work is not part-time. And so there was an acknowledgement when we were negotiating duties and responsibilities, an acknowledgement that it's not even a 40-hour week. And so that does do an impact on the 960, and that is something that I watch. And if I may, I present it that way to just be very cut and dry about the status. I don't want to give an implication of I'm not happy with what I do. I'm very happy with what I do. I want to be of service to you and to this effort. But as far as status goes, the status is very cut and dry. Right? And that is, they pay me over there. There's decisions that got to be made in the future. They're outside of the scope of this specific discussion. And I do keep an eye on my time so that in between now and then, you're not left without
Support.
support.
Okay. Thank
Support,
you.
yes.
Thank you so much for that. Commissioner Sinai and then Commissioner Vasquez.
First of all, my apologies. I didn't quite read number 10 all the way, or I think I had read it before and I thought it was prior to this one when it did talk about nonprofits. So my apologies on that. I've been looking at civic technology. It's kind of a whole field. And I bring it up here in the budget because a lot of our frustrations have to do with technology and ways we might be able to save money is by figuring out what platform would work better for some of these meetings. And, it would be great to be able to see folks when we're talking to them and things like that. But my main reason for the meeting was to understand civic technology and how we would use it for the community input side, but looking at it as big picture. I'm saying all that to say, would someone, because I can have a call with one other person, would someone, if it fits into your, if it works, would someone else like to sit in on that conversation? I did think at some point that those who are maybe someone from the communities of interest tool would want to talk, be part of the conversation. This is a woman who's pretty high up, who's very well respected nationally on this, to see how we would use that tool. But I also think that the administrative side of, there's a big piece here administratively that could work better for us, where we have our documents, all those things, even just so. I just wanted to put it out there. Again, it can only be 2 of us on the call, but I can always, I'm hoping that she will come in and lead a workshop maybe for us, where we kind of dump she facilitates, so we can dump all the different things that we're struggling with, and she can give us ideas of technology that can work for some of that, or where technology won't work. But I just wanted to put it out there, that you're all going to have access to it, but just.
Commissioner Turner, were you?
Yeah, I'd love to sit in on that conversation.
Commissioner Vasquez, you were next.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, and I don't think I had, maybe I knew in the back of my head, but did not crystallize it. So, Raul, you and your time is not, sort of like a full-time salaried employee. So like, for example, I'm still full-time at my otherwise 9-to-5 job.
Yes.
And I'm paid. Some weeks I work 50 hours at that job. Some weeks, you know what I mean? But I'm still paid a particular salary, whereas your time is more akin to someone who is non-exempt. And you need to be tracking your time and are in some ways limited by your contract as an RA, correct? In terms of how much time we can expect to have from you?
Correct. So I report my time on a daily and a weekly basis. I also keep track of it on my own. It is hourly, and so as time ticks, so does the 960.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay,
but
very helpful.
It's not a non-FLS. It's not. FLSA doesn't impact because it's an RA. In other words, there is no overtime.
Right.
No overtime, no holidays, no.
Right. So you're much more like a contractor, and I think that also helps me to manage my expectations, because again, when I'm thinking a full-time salaried employee, it's much more get the job done in however much time it takes, versus, a contractor, but based on time, it's not so much about deliverables as it is we're trying to fit certain deliverables in a particular time constraint, and we cross our fingers and hope that things work as efficiently as possible, but that's not always the case.
Well, no, that's not the attitude at all. It really is more acting. If I was your employee, I would be acting the same way, and that is however much time it takes to get it done. Some of the things take longer because there's only one. Some of the things take longer because it's state processes. Yesterday was 7:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night because the meeting ended. Then we had another meeting to put together the agenda, and then time to work with Rihanna to get the materials posted. That's what it took.
Right, and I'm sorry, I guess what I am trying to say is that as part of a commission that is your, employer, your supervisor, I also want to recalibrate my expectations to respect your time and respect your contract. So that's where I'm coming at this. So
sorry, I
just
misunderstood.
appreciate the clarification. Appreciate the clarification.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going back to Commissioner Sinai's comments, first of all, is that Center for Tech and Civic Life that you're referring to?
I think she's in, I haven't, I think she's the director, no, here it is. Director for Center for Civic Design.
Okay, that's another group, yep.
Yeah, and
So
there's also Civic, something America, Tech America. This one just came strongly recommended from community partners.
Yeah, CCD is very good. I've met some of them, Center for Tech and Civic Life also. And in my Election Line weekly newsletter, I recently came across reference to what looks to be a fairly new group called U.S. Digital Response, and I had shared that with staff. So that would be another option for us to look at.
Okay. Thank you. Raul, were we also going to talk about the phones?
Actually, the things that I have on the list at this
okay.
point is talking about the videography contract, talking about...
Well, that'll be for the next one, right? That'll be for 10?
Yes.
Oh,
well,
okay,
all the rest of them are for 10.
So the phones aren't for the budget? The phones are a contract?
It's a contract.
Okay.
CalNet's what it's called.
Okay, so let me just go through my list real quick to make sure. Okay, I think that was it. And just a reminder, if everyone can turn in their per diem and travel claims monthly, and if you have Raul send out instructions and templates, and if you have any questions, please reach out to him.
I also sent out this morning the employee action request forms and the authorizations for direct deposit. So please look for those. Oh. If you have any questions on those, reach out and we'll find time to go over those forms. They're not 100% intuitive, but they're pretty much okay as the state form goes. But still, if you have questions.
Right. Okay. I'm okay. We can go to 10, but I'm thinking that might be a lengthy conversation too, because we have quite a few things to go through, I believe, right, Raul, or?
It depends on the discussion.
No, I'm just wondering, right. I'm just wondering if we should take a break now and then go to 10. But yeah, I think maybe we will take a break. Yes, and I want to also reemphasize that I do appreciate all of your time, because I receive emails from you at hours that I'm not normal to receiving emails, so I do appreciate it, and we do get frustrated, but at the end of the day, what's being put out by you and Marion and the skeleton crew is actually pretty incredible, considering what has to be put together every single week, and then for every agenda, you have to stop what you're doing, concentrate on the agenda, get the speakers lined up. So just thank you very much.
It's our pleasure.
Okay. Yes, definitely.
I'll speak for you too, Marion.
I'm going to go ahead and call for a break. It's 10:35. So if everyone can be back at 10:50. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We finished with agenda item 9, and now we're moving on to agenda item 10, which is commission contracts and procurement, status and possible action, including report on contracting with nonprofit organizations. Raul, I'm gonna move it over to you.
So as far as the funding for the current videography contract, at the current burn rate, we're looking at somewhere at the end of October, beginning of November, for those funds to be expended. Okay, that's a contract that is we're currently using the state auditor's contract on that for the services. And so what I had proposed to the Finance Committee was, let me go ahead and start the work on that, and I can continue to work with the Finance Committee in terms of the details on that, and then coincident, my suggestion would be with the public outreach, that at the point that where we're working on an actual statement of work, to be able to touch base with that subcommittee in terms of the statement of work. But it is something that needs to be started soon, because like I say, the burn rate, we can already project that right there, end of October, beginning of November, we're going to want to have something ready and in place.
Thank you, Raul. And I'm going to just start the discussion a little bit on that in terms of the RFP for the videography. I went back to the notes from our first full meeting, and some of the scope areas that we wanted to look into or add is we wanted to update the scope based on security threats and also include something in there regarding opportunities for different engagements. And
yes.
And I think it was, yeah, there was quite a bit of the public outreach to make sure that public outreach was taken into account. So those were, and that's why Raul was recommending, I mean, work with the finance committee in terms of the dollars, obviously, and we'll also review whatever RFP goes out, request for proposal goes out, and then have the outreach subcommittee review it to ensure that it's capturing those outreach efforts, and that it's flexible enough for whatever else we might encounter this next year and a half. So if there's any districts have any comments on that, questions?
I really appreciate your last statement just about flexibility, because, just because. But I think, Raul, you bring up a great point, and I've been struggling with this as thinking about a lot of the work that we're doing is it's hard not having a staff partner for some of these things. I'm not saying you're not a staff partner, but if we had the communications person or whatever, they would be thinking about this. But when we need to make decisions so that we can hire the right people or put out the RFP and all those things. So I don't know, is there a general rule of thumb that we should be using? Like, if you want to have something ready by January to go to the public, you should be doing X, Y, so that we back end into it, and that we use that, we have that in the Gantt chart, kind of saying we need to get the RFP out for this or that.
Right, and that solicitation, if I may, probably won't be an RFP. That'll take too long. It'll probably,
that's right.
It'll probably be more with the master services agreements, strictly speaking, the CMAS, and my apologies to the public, it's California Master, and I don't remember right now what the AS is for, but it's a master services agreement. In other words, so it's already been pre-bid. The vendors have been have already what's the word I want? They've already been vetted by the state, and so that's something that we don't have to do, and we can put out a solicitation to those specific vendors and get a response then that the commission can look at.
So Raul, just for clarification, even if they are on the California multiple award schedule, I'm just going to do that.
Very good. Thank you.
Was that it? I can sleep well tonight. Okay.
Yes. Very good.
Because it's on that schedule, we still have to send out the solicitations to them?
Yes.
Okay.
There's still a standard process that we would need to follow.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the videography contract? Commissioner Sinai, was that your hand? Okay.
Yeah, at some point I would love to have a cheat sheet, and maybe you gave it to us already, Raul, because I'm learning that there's a lot of cheat sheets that were given to us, but we got bombarded by a lot at the very beginning from different speakers and stuff. But a cheat sheet on the different ways that we can work with those outside, what they mean, and how much time they take. So as we're thinking through some of this, we don't have to say, just a cheat sheet.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that would definitely be helpful, because it's definitely changed since I was deeply involved into the procurement office. The timeframes. Any other questions? If not, we'll just proceed with the recommendation. Oh, wait, Commissioner Mott, I just called on her. Thank you. Commissioner Mott.
Thank you. CMAS, California Multiple Award Schedule.
Yes.
Yes.
Just wanted to define it. I'm keeping a running list of all the acronyms we're using. That's all.
Very good.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that's it. I'm trying to...
Okay, the next one, are we ready to?
Yeah, so we can proceed with the videographer in terms of working with finance on one side of it, and then the outreach subcommittee to ensure the scope covers the needs in that area.
That would be great. I'll look forward to it.
Thank you.
Okay, so before jumping into the cell phones, I thought I'd take care of the one that's been pending, and that is regarding contracting with nonprofit community organizations. I know that's been of interest. What I did is I contacted the Department of General Services Office of Legal Services, which is the legal department that oversees the contracting and procurement. I figured they would know. And so what I'm going to do is give an overview of how this fits into the public contract code structure, which is the context that we have to work within, and then identify several avenues that we can pursue. Okay. Commissioner Lamont, is that a good overview? Very good.
Then let's move forward.
Then let's move forward. So the Public Contract Code requires open bidding, fairness in bidding, and as such then, solicitations that would go out that you would say, I think we want a nonprofit to bid on this, would also be private entities bidding on it also. And as far as the request for proposal, they would need to be competitively bid. And as such, depending on the criteria that have been established, you can't guarantee that it's going to go one way versus the other. Meaning that you can't slant it towards a specific organization, that's against the Public Contract Code, or you can't slant it towards only specific types of organizations, because that's against competitive bidding. As far as exemptions from competitive bidding, that's called a sole source contract. Sole source contracts are pretty much provided on two bases. One, that there's a compelling emergency such that there is no opportunity to do any bidding, which is not our case. So what's the other one? The other one is where you can identify that the individual or company is the primary source, and other ones would not be able to bid. So for example, I have a proprietary system. I need to do repairs on that proprietary system. There's only one organization that provides the replacement parts for that proprietary system. As such, then I could get, I would put it in an exemption from competitive bidding under that basis. That's the only place that I can get that part, which again makes it difficult because there's an interchangeability in terms of these organizations and the services they provide. So what are our choices then? Well, we could do a competitive bid and see how it lands. We could do one within a context. So, for example, a personal services contract up to $10,000 can be used for what's called a fair and reasonable basis. Fair meaning that you're looking at the potential entities to provide those services on a fair basis, and reasonable in that what they're going to charge you is at a competitive value. So for example, with Ogilvy, that was done on a personal services contract under $10,000. Why was that fair and reasonable? Here was an entity that had provided services to the CRC before up through this summer. So they had a proven track record. We didn't have to pay them to try and identify what to do and who the players are, so there's an advantage there. And as far as the reasonable price, we have the contracts that have been in place with the auditor and to be able to compare what they're charging the commission. And so there was a strong basis then to be able to demonstrate fair and reasonable for that solicitation. Okay. The context, I think, that may allow the commission to do this type of solicitation would be, let's say that we're doing an outreach up in Shasta. Okay. What are the entities there that are the boots on the ground that know the different public groups and members of the public in that area? I think on that basis you could establish documentation to support that the fairness, why these organizations versus another. In terms of the reasonableness, which goes with the cost, that's going to take a little bit more problem solving, in that how do you demonstrate and document that what they're going to charge is competitive from what other organizations would charge. So that's something in the future as we think about these things. But going back, the basis would be the context of that type of meeting, the intents and goals of that meeting, and how these public entities then, public community entities, I should say, can help meet the needs and the services of what's to be accomplished to meet those goals and needs. And I think that would probably be a stronger basis then to establish documentation to defend those types of contracts. One of the things you need to watch out for, or we need to watch out for, is having, without a context, a lot of personal services contracts, because at that point in time you could be questioned about, are you trying to put aside the competitive bidding process? And as such, that's why the context is so important then, in terms of why that type of solicitation and contract was used as a primary means. So that's kind of my Reader's Digest version.
Yes, I see how it can be seen as trying to circumvent the process.
Exactly.
Right? So, mm-hmm.
That's why, again, the context becomes very important.
Right. Commissioner Sanai? And then Lamont?
Thank you. That was really helpful. And just, okay, so if we go back to the public contract structure and we do an open bidding, what is generally the timeframes? The timeframe piece is really important for understanding a lot of this. So how long does it usually, we won't talk about actually drafting it, but from when it's put in the public till money goes out.
Well, see, it's all the front end piece that takes the time. I understand.
Right,
I understand what you're asking. I understand what you're asking, but it is.
So what would be the quickest we could get money out using the public contract structure?
It would be to have some kind of a meeting set up, the specific services identified, and then the homework to identify those entities that could provide those services. And so once that homework has been done and the means of evaluating the costing, then it's a matter of as short as a week.
But you don't have to put like an RFP or something out and then people have to respond?
Okay, that's for the personal services contract under $10,000. That's the fastest.
Oh, okay, yeah, I was going the other way. I was starting with the public contract structure. I mean, the first
open bidding.
Open bidding.
Was it open bidding?
Open bidding.
Yeah, I was looking at open bidding, going down the three options you kind of gave.
You might as well look at around, on a planning basis, I'd say consider the 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
And then, of course, depending on other factors is where you might be able to save time within that preparation.
And then also,
Wait, can I just finish and get the dates for all three of them? Sorry. And then for the sole source, which that was the emergency one, which we don't think that's going to work.
No.
So let's not talk about that one. For the personal contract, you're saying it could be a week if we've done all our homework.
That's to get the contract in place. To pay it, I think the state controller's office allows up to 45 days for actual payment once an invoice is submitted.
All right. That's really helpful. Thank you.
okay,
Bless you.
Commissioner Lamont and then Commissioner Kennedy.
Raul, is it possible for us to get a copy of those providers, vendors that are on the CMAS that are focused on outreach so that we could at least evaluate who's there? At least, well, the outreach subcommittee could evaluate that. And I think there'll also be some clues to begin to build a context case in the event that we want to go with the contract that's less than $10,000. We could begin to do some of that planning and thinking through, because it may work in certain parts of the state differently based on your example. I think that was a really good example. So that we don't think kind of globally that, oh, we can just go this route, but to really start to dig in with the planning as the outreach is being thought through. Is that possible to get a list?
Yes. And what I would do is look at the CMAS, the California Multi-Award Services Contract, the MSA, which is the Master Services Agreements, and the SB, which is the Small Business.
Oh, great. Okay.
Look at all three, and you're going to get a mix of private entities, individuals, companies. I don't know if there's any nonprofits on there, but I agree with you. I think it's worth a look, and we should look.
Thank you.
I can do that.
Thank you. Commissioner Kennedy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Raul, your explanation was very helpful as it was the previous time when we went through some of this. I'm wondering, beyond our mandatory online training courses, are there non-mandatory training courses for state employees that we might have access to that on things like contracting and procurement, but not necessarily exclusively? I'm wondering if Department of General Services or anyone has compiled a global catalog of online training courses developed by various parts of state government, some of which might be useful to us, even if they're not required of us. Thank you.
I don't know of one per se. I can inquire. In other words, one place where it's all collected.
Well, that would be ideal, but the base question, the underlying question is, are there courses developed by any element of state government that might be useful to us? Whether they're all cataloged in the same place or not. Are there online training courses developed by and for state government that could be useful to us, even if they're not mandatory online training courses?
It might be helpful too if you come up with something more specific than any and all, and that would facilitate my search.
My initial thought was on contracting and procurement, and thinking that if there's not one, maybe one of these days when you have some free time, the state might be well served by asking you to develop an online training course. But I'm just looking to see, we know what our required online training courses are, but does the state offer others, and I'm thinking right now, particularly in contracts and procurement, but eventually could be other topics.
And I'll answer that because I do receive a weekly from, I think it's a statewide training, that they have a whole slew of different training classes that they have, and I'll take a look at that, or maybe I'll just send you the link, and we can go through that. But I believe they do have like contracting, procurement, but also we have to be, pick the right one, because some of them you're just like in the weeds, like you're actually going to be the procurement officer versus like an overview, which I think would be super helpful for us.
Right.
So I'll try to send you the link on that. And I've got Commissioner Turner, Commissioner Sinai, and Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Earl, thank you for the explanation. And I think my question might have you repeat a little bit just so that I can ensure I understood. Part of the request, at least my desire in having you bring this back, is to try to see how we can have more nonprofits in a position where they will qualify either now or in the future. And so I wanted to understand, when you were, I think, talking about the competitive bidding process, you made a statement as well that I'm not clear if that is a stated qualification or part of the process, or was it a nice to have. But you talked about, and you may have used Ogilvy as an example, but you talked about the fact that they've done it before and they are familiar with it. How does that play into some of the requirements to be a part of the competitive bidding? Say that portion again.
Good question. That was specifically in regards to being able to demonstrate the requirements for what's known as fair and reasonable, which is the criteria that enables you to use the personal services contract under $10,000. Okay.
Fair and reasonable.
Fair and reasonable. So fairness, again, is in terms of how you're looking at other folks who may be able to provide those services and why this specific entity. And reasonable is in terms of the competitiveness of the price.
Yeah. I think I guess in disagreement with what you're saying, but for me, I'll probably look it up and process a little bit longer, because it seems that it puts anyone that has not already been selected in previous time periods at a disadvantage forever being able to be in this fair and reasonable. So I think I'm struggling a little bit with that.
That was just for that specific example, Commissioner Turner.
Okay, so it wasn't a qualification, it was
No.
just a, okay.
So
That's
for
all I
example, the other personal services contract we have with Rihanna, okay, her contract is specific in two areas. One, in terms of being able to post on the website, and secondarily in terms of the Google Office, right? Finding someone who has the capacity to work with a legacy website like we have was a primary concern. And so I went out and tried to solicit that ability through the retired annuitant structure. It wasn't there. And so it wasn't her fair then came in that there was an attempt made to find those skills in other areas, and because of the nature of the system, that knowledge and ability to perform that work was difficult to find. And so she's able to do that. So that's where the fairness comes in. The competitiveness on her contract is also much more straightforward, because what she's being paid compared to civil service is fairly equitable, and as opposed to looking at how much those services would cost going out into the private sector, for example. And so that's how fair and reasonableness was approached with that specific one. So good questions. Thank you.
I have Commissioner Sinai, Anderson, and Lamont.
I think tomorrow, when Philanthropy California gives us their presentation, they will be talking kind of about, they'll be sharing what happened with Irvine and the investments they made and what they thought. They're getting ready. They've put it out an RFP, and they'll share a little bit about how they've cut back on what they're looking at to do. And one of the questions I asked him to address was, if you had more funding, what you know, if you were able to get more funding from other foundations, because it's a collaborative pool this time, so individual foundations are giving money, what could you do? So that was to spark our thinking as well. And so, you know, it's sounding that if they had some great proposals that would really help us, we wouldn't be able to just take those proposals on, review them, and fund them, because we haven't put out a public contract structure, or we haven't set anything up. That we would have to look at the RFP they have right now and do a parallel process.
Essentially, yes. Let's look at the grants, because that's one of the things that was brought up. Can the Citizens Redistricting Commission provide grants to other entities? And the answer to that is not really, but on two different bases. One is that the California Citizens Redistricting structure is not set up as a grant issuing agency. To be able to do that, we would have to probably go back to State Controller's Office, Department of Finance, and maybe even the legislature to set that up. The other thing is with your funding. You're funded through the general fund. And typically, general fund entities aren't using the general fund to provide grants. On a more focused level, you have your appropriation. And at some point in time, you may need to ask for additional funds, request additional funds. It may create flags when you go back to the legislature for additional funds, and they're asking, so how much money of yours did you give away? And here you're coming back to ask for more. And that being the case, I have to bring that up because right now with the condition of the state, that becomes something that you have to keep in mind.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. One quick question on the competitive bidding. Raul, are we required to just take the lowest bid?
No, with the RFPs, there's an RFP 1, request for proposal 1, and request for proposal 2. The difference being that one is set up with criteria where you take the lowest bid. The other one is set up in terms of responsiveness to the bid.
Right.
Okay, and so you, just on the front end, we would probably want to look at the request for proposal 2.
Yep.
But always the asterisk is the entities, private and nonprofit, who would be responding to it. You would have to look at all of them on an equal basis.
Yes. Okay. Great. Thank you. And then, Chair, this is actually the statewide training, the list that you were talking about. Could you send? I would like to get that, and I don't know if anyone else wants to get it because you said you were going to send it to Commissioner Kennedy. Could we get maybe a just quick hands up who would like to get that, so you can figure out if it's to all or to. I would like to get it.
I'll send it to everyone, and you can delete it if you want. But I think it'll be good information.
Great.
Thank you for that.
Oh, and yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Lamont?
Pass.
Oh. I just need to write this down. Okay, and then just Raul, just for clarification, when we're talking about the nonprofits and doing a request for proposals or whatever route, we'd have to do a separate one for each type of engagement. Is that correct?
You know, I've been thinking about that, and I think it bears some thought. So let's say, and I'm just brainstorming here with you, okay? Let's say that the commission identifies that they're going to do X number of public input meetings in a certain region. You've identified those areas within that region, and you're going to set up those meetings. You've identified the services that you want to be provided in those different areas in those different locales within that region. It'd be a little bit more challenging, but I think we would be allowed to create a request for proposal that takes all of that into consideration and then how it might be awarded. That's something that I would have to work with the Office of Legal Services to actually figure out how can we do a multiple award schedule off of a request for a proposal. But I think it's worth exploring as we move forward.
Okay. Sorry, I just lost everyone like for about 10 seconds. I went blank. Could it be something where, like you were mentioning, you know, one request for proposal, and maybe individuals could respond to specific, okay, I want to do this one, or I want to do like this region or that region. Would it be something that it could be like separate? So then, like you mentioned, you could theoretically have different awards.
Awards for the locations. That's what I'm wondering.
Right.
It's not typically done, but I think it's worth exploring.
Right. I thought I'm trying to remember which job we had done something similar.
They're used a lot in construction.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's done. I'm sorry, just quickly jumping in. That is done. It's in construction. That's certainly done.
Yes.
In engineering services.
Yes.
I don't know if it's actually, and it is done on the state level too, but in those fields.
And so so Commissioner Anderson, that's what got me thinking the other day, knowing that type of request for proposal exists for that structure, and just wondering, for services, would that A, be permissible, and B, if it is permissible, what would we need to do to be able to deliver that type of request for proposal and be in compliance with the Public Contract Code requirements?
Right. Yeah, and that might have been when I was in procurement and planning construction, so that would make sense. Okay. Any other questions before we move on from this? Oh, Commissioner Vasquez?
Yeah, I'm wondering, possibly not for a full presentation because I think that would be too in the weeds, but I'm wondering if folks would be okay with the outreach committee reaching out to another state agency that I have worked with, staff there, the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. So they're a relatively new state agency that I worked with a couple of years ago at my job. We had a contract with them. Because they were a new state agency, my experience with them was that a majority of their work was done through contracts to community-based agencies, of which my agency at the time was one of the recipients of those. And they're still, issuing RFPs for particular buckets of work with school districts. So I'm wondering if it might be useful to talk with one of their lead administrators about how they have structured those RFPs. They are funded by the general fund. I understand that we're doing vastly different work, but a lot of what they're funding is community outreach and technical assistance and capacity building to school districts. And the majority of there may have been one or two sort of for-profit corporate recipients of those, but because the bread and butter of a lot of these community organizations is outreach, they were the best positioned to receive those contracts from the CCEE. So we might just, I'm willing to have a phone call with them, and Raul, maybe we could loop you in if you're available, just so that you can help code switch and translate some of the information we receive.
Sure, I'd love to talk to their contracting and finance folks. This is, the commission poses a really, really interesting question with this, and I understand what the intent is, and we're still at a point right now to where doing this work to find out, I think is what we need to be doing. So yes, just let me know, and I'll make sure to make myself available.
Commissioner Sinai?
I wanted to build on what you all were talking about. One RFP for different regions and say, could it also be one RFP for different scope of work, like, you know, public education, or, you know, I still haven't thought it all through. Or do we need different RFPs for each piece? Like, you know, creating a video to explain redistricting plus the community information, you know, communities of interest tool, you know, the different, so
The different pieces, right?
there's the different pieces, because there's a public, as the framework shows, there's the public education, there's the outreach, and there's the engagement, and really the regional part is a lot of that is outreach and engagement, but the public education and civic could be different. Maybe it's just written, how would you do this, and we get different RFPs.
Okay. So, Commissioner Lamont?
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that I think those are the things that the subcommittee should explore and then come back when you have a little clearer plan as to what direction you want to go. We have the framework now for how we can secure potential resources to support what we're trying to do, and it can probably take on any number of complexions. But I think that this would be where you guys would sort that out. Regional, local, different RFP might be appropriate for a regional one, and then using the other approach for something more localized, who knows? But I think the plan has got to be sorted out before we get into the weeds of which mechanism is appropriate.
Right, exactly. And in the interim, if Raul, you or someone can look into the possibility of, you know, one major RFP and potentially having multiple vendors awarded the RFP.
Right.
That'd be great.
I will.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on that before we move on to the next topic in this agenda item 10? Okay. Next one, Raul.
Okay. So cell phones. The little ones.
I think they're hollow.
Okay. So I will first be providing you an overview on where the process has been and why, where are we now, and then more specifically on the where are we now, what are our choices and how do we make them? Okay.
Great.
So the commission currently has a contract with Verizon. It actually is the one that I put into place back in 2011. It's still there. The plus about that then is it allows an easy door. I contacted them and they were getting ready to roll over into a different contract and asked me, do you want to try and get in now or wait till we get into the different contract? And so I started asking about, well, what are the advantages to the commission price-wise? And they anticipated that there'd be more advantage this second go-round. That work has finally been completed, and so I went ahead and contacted Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, I think predominantly those three, through the CalNet services for a bid. And what I asked for was on 21 lines, so that's 14 commissioners, 7 staff, just to start. And I wanted an up-to-date phone capable of at least 4G with services for unlimited voice, data at a reasonable level, unlimited text messages. And so the bids have been coming in terms of what those services might look like. Your front runners right now are Verizon, who's basically offering $50 for all the above, and a Samsung 10 cell phone, and T-Mobile, and I'm waiting for them because actually I was talking to them during break, and I wanted something that I could compare with more side by side, and so I'm waiting for that. So at this point, it's a matter of seeing which one is going to provide the better array of services at a better cost and be able to provide us the phones. I want them for free, basically. Otherwise, and I also want there to be a minimal, if no charges for just getting the system set up for each person. Because that can run into thousands just to have your phones turned on. And so that's where we are now.
Did we also look into hotspots potentially? Because I know some of us may have. I'm actually using my hotspot on my personal phone right now, so I don't know if that's a feature that's included.
Yes. So, like for example, with the Verizon, you can use the phone as a hotspot, and with Samsung 10, it's capable of being able to do that. Because I know, yes, for several folks, and then Commissioner Vasquez, you were mentioning with the Wi-Fi calls yesterday. And so that's why having equipment that's more state-of-the-art and at least 4G capable really needs to be at the forefront of what we're doing.
And so how much longer do you need to wait to receive the other bids? I mean, was there a time frame in terms of when to submit the bids or the cost?
So hopefully today.
Oh, okay.
I let them know when I talked to them during break that we're in the middle of the meeting right now. I told them I'm talking to you during break. And so if you could please send me something that I can then respond back to the commission before the meeting's over, that would be the ideal.
Okay. And if we have to maybe continue this discussion till tomorrow morning when you have all of the information, then that would probably be good as well.
Yes.
Any questions regarding phones, cell phones? Commissioner Anderson? Sorry,
I do just have one. My phone, it's AT&T, so I'm wondering. It comes up AT&T. It's totally AT&T. So that you mentioned Verizon did surprise me. Does that mean the ones we're using are? Do we have two contracts going on? That's what I'm wondering.
No.
Did the state auditor use AT&T, but we've had an existing Verizon account that we just haven't been using?
So the state auditor has an account with AT&T. And if I may, they're very happy with their services that they're getting. That's why they went ahead and when they got us the interim phones, their interim phones are AT&T. Our Verizon, there's only been, I think, one line extant over the last few years, but that's been enough to keep the account in good standing.
Got it. Okay.
And so
thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions regarding phones? Commissioner Kennedy?
Just to say that, for those of us who do live in isolated locations, the coverage map is going to be an important factor to consider as well, not just price and features, but coverage maps.
Yes. Oh no, I agree. I live quasi in the sticks too, and so I know exactly what you mean. Certain parts of the house is great. Certain other parts of the house, just not so much.
Right, I agree too. We had AT&T that didn't work for me at home, and now Verizon seems to work. But obviously, this is very important to all of us, and I would love to make a decision before the end of our meeting tomorrow. So if it's okay with, I was going to say, if it's okay with everyone, tomorrow morning when we can revisit this, when Raul has all of the information, and then at that point can make a decision to move forward. And Commissioner Lamont, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Verizon happens to be the carrier of choice for where I live also, and I'm wondering, among commissioners, is Verizon a problem in any of the commissioners' area? So if we are looking at Verizon, because it is a problem in your area, Commissioner Sinai? No.
No.
So Okay, so is everybody thumbs up on Verizon, just in terms of coverage? I'm not talking about cost or anything like that. Is there anybody where it's horrible and it won't work for them?
Commissioner Vasquez?
Well, the problem is that everything is horrible. So for me, it's more about the phone and the ability to
Okay,
connect
so
via Wi-Fi.
so you should be okay with the Wi-Fi.
Right.
As far as everybody else on cell service issue, does anybody else have a problem with Verizon?
Commissioner Turner?
I just want to state, I moved 2 months ago and I have no clue if Verizon works here or not. So I don't want to not say anything. I just don't know about Verizon yet. I'm assuming it should work fine.
And I have T-Mobile for my personal phone and the AT&T for the commission phone, both of which seem to work well, but I don't know about Verizon.
Okay. Okay. So with that, we'll still wait till tomorrow morning to get the feedback, but it sounds like most don't seem to have issues, except we don't know with Commissioner Kennedy or Commissioner Turner, and Commissioner Vasquez is just a universal bad. Does that summarize it? Okay, but if you have a hotspot capability or Wi-Fi, then okay. Does that sound okay with everyone if we just revisit it in the morning once we have all the information? Okay. All right. So we'll bring that one back, Raul, tomorrow morning.
Very good.
So your next one?
So that's what I had to bring up for item number 10.
Oh, I think that's all I had on my list. Anything else for contracts and procurement? Okay. All right. At this point, even though we don't have to, I would like to go out to public comment since we did discuss 2 agenda items. Raul, can you read the instructions, please?
And this will be public comment regarding agenda items 9 and 10?
Mm-hmm.
And general.
And general. Really? And general?
That's what I understood.
It was just 9 and 10.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so the commission will advise the viewing audience when it is time to submit public comment. At this time, we are submitting, if you would like to submit public comment for agenda items 9 and 10, that's agenda items 9 and 10, the commissioners will then allow time for those who wish to comment to dial in. To call in, first of all, on your phone, please dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. Second, when prompted, enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed using your dial pad. Third, when prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound sign. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue from which a moderator will begin unmuting callers to submit their comment. You will also hear an automatic message to press *9 to raise your hand, which indicates that you wish to comment. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will unmute you, and you will hear an automatic message stating the host would like you to talk and to press *6. That's *6 to speak. You will then have time to provide your comments. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please remember to turn down the live stream volume. The commissioners will take comment for every action item on the agenda, and at this time, again, we're soliciting public feedback for agenda items 9 and 10. The process for making a comment will be the same each time. Begin by dialing the telephone number provided on the live stream feed and then following the instructions as I have provided. They are also located on the website. Madam Chair?
Okay. Jesse, do we have anyone? I don't see anyone in queue, but...
There are currently no callers in the queue.
Okay, we'll just wait another minute or so and see if someone calls in.
Yeah, I recall at some point during our conversation, a number popped up and then kind of went away. So someone might call in. I don't know.
Okay.
Good morning, caller. Could you please state and spell your name for the record, please? We cannot hear you.
Yeah, this is Renee Westa Lusk. Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Do I need to spell my name?
Yes, please.
Renee is the first name. The last name is Westa, and then there's a hyphen, and then it's Lusk, Lusk.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
I have a question regarding the cost. This is agenda item number 9. Is there any, I looked at the budget that was in the report from the 2010 Commission, and they had 2 categories of meetings in their budget. My question has to do with, is there any data on the cost per day for meetings that the original 2010 CRC had? I'm just assuming from the discussion it costs more to do virtual meetings of the California CRC than if meetings are conducted in person. I guess it looks like from that budget, that one-page budget, the meetings included travel expenses for all the commissioners and staff that had to go to all the different meetings at the cities and the counties back in 2011. So I'm assuming is the budget going to be bigger, and there will be no cost savings because virtual meetings and virtual hearings will be more expensive to conduct? That's mainly my question.
Thank you. I don't believe we've done that analysis yet, have we, Raul?
No, but one of the things to keep in mind when someone looks at that 2012 report is that those are 2011 and 2012 dollars, and so you can't do a straight side-by-side comparison without doing some kind of adjustment for those 2011, 2012 dollars into 2020. It's always going to look a lot larger. So are they really more expensive? When she talks about 2 meetings, there was the business meetings and there was the public input meetings.
Right.
So there is data for the 2 separate types of meetings. From what I've seen, the main difference is the cost of services now compared to then. But I think if you were to put it on an equal basis, it'd probably be fairly comparable.
Okay, so maybe that's something that we'll look into later. So
yes.
Thank you for that feedback.
I just want to ask, so then you think virtual meetings of the commission compared to in-person meetings like they used to have are going to be the same cost, you're guessing right now?
Well, right now he's guessing. We haven't really looked into it, so we don't want to commit to something, and it's probably something that we may look into in the future.
My point was just to bring up if there's any way to save money doing virtual meetings or not. I guess that's all I wanted to make the point about. Okay, thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, Jesse?
There are currently no more callers in the queue.
Okay, thank you. Out of this. Okay, so we will move on to the last agenda item for the day, which is number 13, which is developing camaraderie within the commission, discussion and possible action. On this agenda item, it appears to be, it's just kind of like an open discussing ways on how we can build camaraderie as a team. So at any time, if anyone wants to jump in, I did actually went on the internet last night and I looked at, different articles out there in terms of how to build camaraderie during these COVID times. And one of these, I just have to say, kind of made me laugh, because if I did it with my family, it was give out blind directions where they pair you up and one's blindfolded, and you're supposed to put them somewhere and then verbally give them directions on where to turn. And I was just picturing my family taking me out in the middle of nowhere, and then they left. So hopefully that's not something we would do. But
I think that is what we're doing right now, quite frankly, with the 2 people in subcommittees. I think that's exactly what we're doing.
Okay. Yes, and that definitely helps. But we don't. When you have subcommittees, you're not working with. You're working with an individual.
Exactly. We can't talk to each other.
Right, but you're not working. Yeah, you're getting to work with one-on-one individually, which is great, and I've actually really appreciated that opportunity, but I haven't had an opportunity to work with everyone else individually. And if we do that, at that point, that's a full-time job in itself. So they did have some kind of good ideas in terms of, game time, like trivia or something like that. But anyway, so I'm throwing it out there. If anyone has any suggestions, I honestly don't know where we're going to go with this at this point. But, Mr. Anderson?
I do have a question. Does that also have to be done in public? I mean,
if it's more than 2, it does have to be done.
Okay.
Not if you don't discuss commission business.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
If it's purely social.
And then I do have one thing that, who brought that up? Someone brought it up, and I don't recall who. I think it was that the 2010 got together in like a large auditorium where they could all be in one area, but far enough apart, or instead, like in a large park or something like that. Just in terms of actually seeing each other's faces. I can't remember who brought that up, but that's just to throw out there.
Also, Marion, just for clarification, if we do something like that, it has to be noticed?
No.
The same process?
No.
It does not?
As long as it's not a business meeting, you don't discuss or conduct any business. Purely social.
No work.
Okay. But obviously discussion of it is an open forum, so if we decide to do something, date, time, that would be public information in that sense, right?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Turner?
Yeah, I like, of course, the suggestion on the table of getting together somewhere large. But in trying to think this through earlier, I don't know if we have our videographers or what have you have the capability, but if we could go into Zoom rooms of 2 and not discuss commission business, we can kind of at least do some sort of speed, get to know you, 5 minutes, switch again, and we'll be able to do it online and meet with just 2 people and be able to have conversation that way as well.
Like that speed dating?
Absolutely.
That's nice. Nice suggestion. Okay, wait. Now I've got to mark them down. Let's see. Commissioners Akutagawa, Vasquez, and Sadwani.
So at my organization, when COVID started, we did implement just a no work, let's just be social, excuse me, time in which we can just kind of check in and get to know each other. And so one of the things that, it was getting kind of old what we were doing. So what we started doing is we started rotating the I guess the facilitation of our check-in sessions. And so far it's been going pretty well because people are bringing different kinds of activities, things that we can do together as a team to get to know each other. And that's really what it is. It's not just a check-in, how are you doing kind of thing, but like, what can we do to get to know each other? So a couple suggestions, or from what we did is, one of the ones that I really liked is one of my staff members asked us to use the other side of our brain and draw what our dream room in our dream house would be, or dream space would be. That was kind of interesting because, drawing is not something that we may all do. So that was kind of fun, and just kind of explaining to everybody what and why we wanted and everything like that. When I had my turn, I like to cook, so I asked everybody, what's your signature dish? And it was really interesting hearing what people talked about is their signature dish. So that's just kind of a suggestion in terms of something that we could do where we can all hear. There is a lot of us, I know, but it's still kind of fun to hear, everybody's perspectives on some of these things.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Vasquez?
Yeah, could we, since if it would be social and, no business, no shop talk, could we not organize like a Zoom social hour? I'll just say for my health right now, I am not able to travel or really be outside for very long. But would love to be able to just hang out for an hour and get to know whomever wanted to join a social hour.
Yes, that's a good idea. Commissioner Sadhwani?
I think Commissioner Vasquez answered my question. I love all of the ideas that have been put out. I just wanted to know if certainly the idea of meeting in person was put out there. Does that feel comfortable to folks? Is everyone just trying to get a sense of the room so that we know better than how to plan.
Right. Commissioner Sinai? Was that kind of a hand? Mute. You're on mute, Commissioner Sinai.
So there's a couple of things we can do, borrowing from my teenage daughter. There's a movie that's out there about gerrymandering that could be interesting for all of us to watch, but that might be business related, so forget it. So maybe we find another movie that's not, just an interesting movie. We all watch it, we have it going, and we all talk, whatever. But it's amazing how much they talk through the movies they're watching. The other one is we can all have a meal together and not be together. And so there are certain meal services, we all order, and we get it delivered and we just sit here and we talk and eat a meal. So we feel like we did share a meal, because sometimes it feels weird to just have a social hour and not have anything. So we also can, there's all the picture ones are kind of fun, where we have to guess who's who based on their baby picture, or who's their dad, or who's their mom, whatever. But I feel like just if we do just a sit and eat a virtual meal together, and we all take turns to sharing a little bit of our family or whatever, those are the kind of the things that kind of connect us, and ask any of the random questions we have. But we can do a virtual meal. It's not that hard to set up. I know at the very beginning I was trying to figure out, I got a virtual box yesterday with all this stuff for a conference I'm going to, and it has everything from a mask to treats to a virtual bingo, which I thought was kind of funny. Like, I thought of when if a dog interrupts, that's one of your virtual bingo things. But it also had, and I know this, I thought of, it has, I don't know if you can see them, but just signs that you can put up, which I think sometimes we all need signs just to agree with each other and stuff. So I was just laughing at this package saying, wow, how, I know I said I wanted to create a package like this and send it out to all of you all so that we would have something like that. But there are things that we can do like that.
Thank you. Commissioner Vasquez?
There's also, I'd have to ask a friend, but she hosts weekly Zoom trivia with her friends from all over the place. So I don't know if there are any trivia fans, but that could be a fun way to get to know each other over an hour and see who's competitive.
I must say, when I did my Google searches or my searches last night, a lot of it was trivia, doing the trivia virtually. Commissioner Anderson?
We we did my husband has a large family, and his parents are older and they live on the East Coast. So we have done a lot of Zoom family calls, and which is really nice. And kind of course, they all talk over each other. So there's a real problem in that. But we did actually try the Trivial Pursuit. Do you remember the old Trivial Pursuit game? Well, if you pull out those old cards and play those old cards, the whole set, that's you can see the generational gap. You can see all sorts of things. And that's actually very funny. And just in terms of like, okay, who knows any of these people at all? It's a question of, nope, if you weren't born before, 1930, you are not going to know any of this. So it was kind of really interesting. That's a fun idea, pulling out old trivia cards just to go, who even has a clue about it. But that was just a thought there.
Commissioner Taylor?
Yeah, I just want to throw in my 2 cents. Social hours seems great. And just to Commissioner Sinai's suggestion, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage if we have baby pictures.
Oh. That was funny. Commissioner Yee?
I'm wondering, Roel, so the 2010 commission, traveled together and had meals together on the road. I'm wondering if they did anything else that you can mention that were good ideas. Another thought, I'm wondering, a private Facebook group, I mean, that might be too risky, but that would be a lot of fun, I think. Would that be possible?
We go back to, did the 2010 commission have any team building? I mean, of course, they were able to get together, which hopefully helped build that camaraderie.
Right. It really wasn't an issue for them because they could get together, and especially when they were on the road. I know they shared meals. Staff were present so that, be able to demonstrate that there was not inappropriate discussions. So that was almost a nightly thing when they were on the road. They didn't have the challenges that you have. My look of consternation about the Facebook page is, number one, I don't really know a lot about Facebook. It's not something I use. And so I can only go on what I've heard, and that's whatever my kids have told me, to be quite honest. So I really don't have any feedback there as far as safety and security.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kutagawa, and then Commissioner Turner.
I guess my 2 cents on the Facebook is it's only as good as the people who are willing to participate on it. And to be honest, I've been trying to boycott Facebook, so I would probably not be very active on it. So.
And I was just
Turner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to respond. Commissioner Sadwani had asked about comfort level to help with planning. I am comfortable traveling now. I think many of you know that I was out with COVID for a couple of months, and then the aftermath of the issue. But I'm feeling healthy and strong. And also wanted to suggest if you come up north at all, I have access to facility that can accommodate up to 500 people. So I think we could certainly social distance in it, if for those that are comfortable. But I just wanted to respond to that.
That is very good to know. when I did my research, my youngest is an artist, and I am absolutely not an artist. So he's gotten into this Bob Ross. Okay, so I'm gonna age myself. Bob Ross, and he has these YouTube videos, and so he's actually like watching the Bob Ross video, and he's painting it. And when he's done, it looks awesome. So we could do something like that. Mine will not look awesome. It will look, you won't know what it looks like actually, but I mean, that's another thing potentially we could do where everyone's kind of doing it at home, or if at some point in time we get together, we could do that. It'd kind of be kind of funny and embarrassing probably for me personally, because I'm sure everybody else would be much better than me. But so there's a lot of suggestions that have been put out. I don't think at this point we're going to make a decision, but what I'm going to suggest is all of this, that the information, we'll send it out to everyone, and then maybe if we can think about it in a couple weeks, a couple of meetings, or maybe 2 or 3 meetings, whenever we can agendize it, maybe we come back and solidify in terms of what everyone is more comfortable with or willing to do, or yeah, that sounds good, or we can combine the having a dinner with your what was it, eating together and signature meal at the same time, and that's a good discussion. And then we have Commissioner Vasquez has her hand.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I mean, is this really commission business? If we're trying to organize a social hour, could we not talk either in a small group or have like a schedule? I mean, there's 14 of us, but I've been on bigger scheduling emails, right? So could we not do that and not have, do we have to have this discussion about social hour scheduling, like the technical pieces, the admin piece of it in a public session, or can we do that over email?
Marianne, what are our parameters for that?
There are no limits on what you can do as long as it's non-business.
Oh, okay. So with that being said, Commissioner Anders, but also, okay, Commissioner Anderson, let's go to.
Okay, I'm just going to throw something out here because it looks like we might be coming to the end of the day in terms of topics that we're going to cover. What if we just say, okay, everyone, when we break, everyone go, prepare a lunch, come back on and do just a casual eat our lunch over just the same video connection, but just by ourselves, just chat about whatever. And chat about not business items.
Not business.
Not business items. Since we already have the time and we're scheduled today, we're all here. I'm going to throw that out there as an idea in terms of timing, that kind of thing.
Christian, would that be possible to organize as sort of like a closed meeting that's not open to the public if it's just a social hour?
We can absolutely do that.
And yes, you're absolutely right, Commissioner Anderson, that this is the last agenda item and we would be done after this agenda item. I will ask for public comments before we close. And then we would not return until tomorrow morning at 9:30. Commissioner Vasquez and then Commissioner Ahmad.
Sorry, last thing, because I've had to set up all of this stuff because I'm limited in travel, but I have my own Zoom account. So we are also, if we were going to do something social, virtual, we don't necessarily need to rely on staff to have a social lunch, now or in the future.
Commissioner Ahmad?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify for folks listening in, any social hour that we have as a group will not be charged for pay.
And just for future, I don't have a Facebook account, and I purposely do not have a Facebook account, so I have to figure out how to get to that. I mean, I do know how to use it because for my job, I have one, but I don't have it personally. So any other comments is Commissioner Turner?
I just wondered if we even had the capability for private rooms, because I threw it out, but I didn't get a response. I don't know if that's even an option.
Oh, Christian said he could set that up.
Raul has his hand up.
Raul, Yes, I was waiting for Marion to finish, but thank you. Roe?
I just have a question, please, regarding the interviews. Will those be live attendees?
For next week?
Yes.
I was assuming it would be the same as last time.
Well, that's why I'm asking.
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to ask the subcommittees. Commissioner Vasquez?
We haven't talked about this as a committee, but I think one, if not maybe more than one, is not local to Sacramento. And I personally am comfortable with a virtual interview since they're virtual to me right now anyway.
I think I would concur as it relates to the director of communications. I think that we had established earlier in our conversations as a full commission that it wasn't necessarily required that the director of communication be in Sacramento or local. So that being the case, I think we have to be open to a virtual environment. So I think as long as they schedule on the one day that we picked out, 14th, I'm comfortable, the subcommittee is comfortable with it being live or virtual.
So are you also comfortable maybe it being like 1 or 2 are virtual, 2 or 3 are live? Does it matter?
Yeah, yes, I'm fine with that. It doesn't seem to matter to me. I don't think it affects their ability to do the job.
Okay. And what about the chief counsel?
Because it's so Sacramento focused, the preference would be in person. But if for some reason they can't do it in person, the virtual might be a possibility.
How about commissioners? Are any of you planning to come here for the actual interviews?
I'm available.
I did send an email saying that I'd be there every day next week for our meetings.
What did you think it was valuable being here last time in person?
Yes, I did, because you get to see, well, I don't want to give it away, but you get to see all of the different the nonverbals. You get to see that as well. So for me, I did appreciate being there. It would have been fine if I wasn't there also. And really the real reason I'm going, I mean, for the interviews, but also it's Mr. Claypool's, he's starting on Monday. So I feel it's important, hopefully someone to be there. I know you'll be there, but maybe someone from the commission to be there. Let's see, Commissioners Kennedy and Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just got a note back from Professor Rick Hazen at UC Irvine. He has probably the most active election law blog in the country, and he has posted our chief counsel job posting. So if you go to electionlawblog.org, it's right there.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Anderson?
Oh, sorry, what it was, just to finish that, Commissioner Kennedy, it was election law
blog.org.
Got it, thank you. One quick thing on the press release that went out does not have the correct information on it about the date for the chief counsels. It said, that the posting closed September 30th, and that's not actually, it did not, that was over, but it has been extended, and it doesn't say that. So anyone you tell, please say, no, that press release unfortunately is not correct. Let's see, my question, about going. I felt it was very valuable because you do get to see the nonverbal and the person, and I would be, if the chief counsel is going, or if one of those people are going in person, then I would indeed like to go up there, up to Sacramento.
What press release are you referring to?
She's referring to the executive director, and the reason it's inaccurate is the latest information that we had was that it was closing on the 30th, and we didn't find out of the date change until yesterday.
Yeah, but I would like from moving forward, if communications, if it involves any other subcommittee, please check with that subcommittee, since the subcommittees can't report to the full group until the full meeting. That information was indeed known by the subcommittee, but we couldn't report it. So the communications person must contact anything that involves the subcommittee, contact that subcommittee to verify the information. I'd like to put that out there, please.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yeah, I mean, that was why I was clarifying yesterday with staff. So the blog posting says, please note that the first round of interviews is scheduled for 13 October, but we will continue to accept applications until the position is filled.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? We do have a suggestion out there to have a virtual lunch hour after the end of this meeting. Is anyone, okay, I guess thumbs up if you're interested. How about if we just do it that way? If you're interested in having a lunch, okay. But I'm gonna ask if we not have it right away because I don't have my lunch ready yet. So if that would be okay, it is, okay, any other questions before I go to public comment? Oh, Commissioner Ahmad?
Can I suggest we reconvene at like 12:45-ish or 1 for our non-business related camaraderie event?
Yes, definitely. That would work out well. Let's go to a public comment, please. Raul? And this would be for, I guess, general at this point. No, could you read the instructions for?
Yes, I was waiting for everything to get said on the other side.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No problem. We're ready.
Okay.
Okay, the commission will advise the viewing audience when it is time to submit public comment. At this time, you're being asked if you would like to submit general public comment, to please do so. Commissioners will then allow time for those who wish to comment to dial in. To dial in, number 1, on your phone, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. Second, when prompted, please enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed using your dial pad. Third, when prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound sign. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue from which a moderator will begin unmuting callers to submit their comment. You will also hear an automatic message to press *9 to raise your hand, indicating that you wish to comment. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will unmute you and you will hear an automatic message. The host would like you to talk and to press *6 to speak. You will have time to provide your comments. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and please remember, turn down the live stream volume. The commissioners will take comment for every action item on the agenda. At this point in time, we are taking general public comment, and the process for making a comment will be the same each time. Begin by dialing the telephone number provided on the live stream feed, and then following the instructions as I have outlined. And these instructions are also on the website. Madam Chair?
Thank you, Raul. Jesse, I don't see anyone, but you might see someone in the queue.
There are currently no callers in the queue.
Okay, we're just going to wait a couple minutes, and while we wait, I'm just going to let everyone know that on the agenda for tomorrow, we're going to go back and revisit the cell phones, agenda item 10. That would be our only discussion item, I believe. And then we're going to have discussion, agenda item number 11 regarding the discussion of strategies for outreach. That will be at 10:30 in the morning. And then agenda item number 12 will be strategies for public input meetings, and that will be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then Christian, just a quick question for you for our lunch, virtual lunch. Are you going to send a separate email to us, or we just dial back into this one?
Probably best to send a separate email the same way we do for closed session.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, so we will, 1 o'clock would be a good time to reconvene for that. So anyone, Jesse?
Madam Chair, there's no callers in the queue currently.
Okay, Commissioner Kitagawa?
Just just a question for tomorrow, the speakers that we have at 2:00.
Mm-hmm.
If we're able to finish our morning presentation earlier, would it be possible to move them up to an earlier time frame?
I'm not sure if that would be possible, and we also have to take into account, I think, Commissioner Sinai, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we gave them like a 2-hour allocated time, and then we also have the lunch hour in there, so I'm not sure like how much sooner than 2:00 we would come back from lunch, if that makes sense. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll see everyone either at lunch or tomorrow morning at 9:30. Thank you.